A couple of mistakes were pointed out to me in my play. It's one of the advantages of putting it online. One of them, I had the aid pumped above 30. It actually is limited to 29. I didn't even notice that in the rule book. There's a lot of little words here. Cartels, resources, great effort. They kind of tiny little print in these. They're meant to be some sort of reminder. I don't know how well they work. They certainly don't for me. They look like a copyright notice or something. And the other one is on the ambush action. I missed a couple of things. One is the attack doesn't flip everything over, so I've got to be kind of careful. I can't just, well, I can't just ignore the rules. And also, if it's after it's done, it'll place a replacement gorilla for the guy who flipped off, so you get more people. So that's kind of impressive too. Anyway, let's kick this sucker off. I don't want to go through all the thought processes on everything. We got the cards up. I'll figure it out and come back. Okay, so the rich guys win. The cartels did not want the DEA agents event to come out. They're a little afraid that people would actually play this just for the event. I don't know. Not too likely. But the biggie is they get to trigger the first event. Anyway, the fact that they were a little afraid made them go up and do the op only, which prevents the event, and that only allowed a limited action. Now, the government took that limited action because they're not sure that they don't believe they'd get a shot at it on the next card. So they did a sweep into here for the cartels. They did a movement action. We got one of them stuck on the road. They have a hard time moving. They only move one space no matter what. So, like, if you do a sweep, you're allowed to go onto the road and then continue if it's empty, right? No. I don't remember. Something allows you to do that. Yeah. If you move on to an LOC, you can then move into an adjacent area. This is interesting. I don't think you can sweep unless there's a road to move on to. Oh boy, I screwed that up, didn't I? Now, I could have done it here, boink boink, so that's legitimate. Maybe there are roads in most of these places. There's one down here, one here. So it looks like overall that may not be a disadvantage, but I think... See, here it's in addition they may move into an adjacent LOC, and here it's move on to an adjacent LOC. You're meant into a space. I don't know. Anyway, I think I've been playing it correctly by the rules as opposed to by the player aid card. Those discrepancies are a little disturbing. But yeah, this is the first time we've seen a movement action, and the reason for the guerrillas here, and the reason for the cartel is they got a couple of these bases that are unprotected. If they start doing well, they need troops there. Now, I wanted to do a rally action, but I didn't have any troops. I guess I could have done a rally action, created more bases or something. I'm not that clever, I suppose. Anyway, the next card caused some trouble because this is an AUC desirable card. It could have given them some resources. They weren't in a lot of spaces with cartels, though. And the government player agreed to pay for attacks, but the AUC did not want to do, and we're actually suggesting not to, do an ambush here because the defectors and deserters event could be used against them then, so the FARC could grab a couple of spaces. So just like last turn, somebody goes with this, and also just like last turn, somebody went with a march option. Ooh, I cheated. Somebody went with a march option, but this time with the second action, we've got the FARC trying to infiltrate their way into this space. Now this is dangerous because the government can do the patrol action, which allows them to kind of sweep the road. It's very much like the security option in Vietnam, as I mentioned when I was looking over the rules, at least from what I can see. I haven't actually done it yet, but you know, they kind of drive around and slam into the actual road and wipe things out. Things are icky for the FARC. They would have kind of liked to do a rally, maybe get some troops here, but they've got so many places to cover. It's kind of odd that they chose a movement to push these forward instead of protecting one of their places. But in a sense, they kind of don't think they can protect everything, and they're going to try to establish bases or whatever somewhere else. They feel like they're getting driven out of the areas that they're in. And let's see what we got here. That brings these back. There was a thought even of passing, but I go so late in the next card that that's not going to work well. Let's get this out of my way, and now we pull up the next card. National Coordination Center. This could wipe out a lot of AUC. We've got 2 cards in a row to wipe out AUC, but this could also give some support to the AUC. They're probably going to want to cancel this. And a lot of cards are coming out that players want to cancel, actually. Massive government sweeps and an airstrike driving an isolated base to death. Wanted to have more troops here for the purpose. I've got to keep these here too, though, for the purpose of trying to get rid of that opposition there. Now maybe the AUC is going to get out of there, and that'll help me a little bit. But that's not really one of their priorities. For the cartels, they had to take a limited action because I chose to do my special op there. Well, I didn't choose to do the event, and they just moved into this city, protect their cartel base. And now I got this National Coordination Center, which is interesting for the AUC. Tres Esquinas. A base and 3 troops, or overrun a base. I don't know. The base is a bonus, being able to do that so cheaply. Yeah. We'll see what the guerrillas here do. Okay, the AUC wanted to cancel out that event, so they did an attack in Guaviare. But here's the thing, I screwed up, I think. My sweep operation, and maybe I was doing it right before, in the forest, I shouldn't have been able to sweep as effectively as I did. I'm okay, I'll let it stand. It's not worth doing that, going back. Because what the FARC ended up doing, they've decided they're under too much pressure, so they did... If they had a full action, they would have rallied everything and flipped everything over. But instead, they paid only $1 because all they have is a limited action, and sucked everything that was flipped over into here, turned it upside down so it's hidden. They're kind of sacrificing this base over here in Meta East, but it feels like they're on the downswing, and it's just going to get worse if they don't surrender their bases. That they're not going to have the kind of power that they need to operate. And then these switch around. This comes into play, and our new one, Tapias. Assault costs 1 resource. This is a government capability. Assault's going to be either cheaper or only 1 space per card. And now this makes the government not really want to take this next action. They got to make sure they control this card. Speaking of which, the AUC has been basically taking government funding for every action they do. They're saying, this is going to cost me 1. You want me to do it? Like over here where they attack the bases. And they're getting their own goals done on the government's dime, which is kind of cool. Of course, the government could refuse to pay, and then the AUC could build up their own strength instead. Or, if they really wanted to make that attack, and in this case they probably did, pay for it themselves. But it's something the government desires. The government's going to have to be careful, though, because at this point the AUC is getting close to the FARC number of bases, and that's their victory conditions. We've got to make sure that the AUC is not powerful as we begin to diminish the FARC. The government wanted to save its action for the next card. They like that card, and it could be painful if it turns the other way. So they went for a pass, grabbed a resource. Actually, whoa, they get 3 resources, so I give them too few. May have done that before. That allowed the cartels to have a full activity. Well, there isn't a lot they wanted with it. Their regular operations as an insurgency, they kind of want to keep a low profile, not piss too many people off. They did a movement operation so that they could drop the extra guy in here. But the biggie is the limited. They did a cultivate, dropped another base. Now their victory conditions are 10 or more bases and 40 or more resources. They've got to put a lot of bases down for this to work. But if nobody's paying attention, well, chances are nobody will be paying attention until they get close. And that's kind of the thing. Then I think this whole game is going to kind of devolve into a number of people are kind of close to the limits. Of course, that's going to be in pairs. So the FARC were able to make it on their own to close to the limit. But now if they rebuild, it's probably while the cartels are also rebuilding themselves up into a powerful position. Likewise, as we can look at this, the AUC is getting close. So at some point or another, the government has to actually turn against the AUC, I guess. Or at least focus less on the FARC alone. And it's just going to always have that balance where people are constantly having to, you know, figure out, hey, can I be helping myself? Can I be hurting this person, or do I have to worry about this person? Just, you know, this regular looking at the board and trying to figure out who's going to win, and I don't know. That's kind of an exciting thing if it's easy to see. Plan Colombia, U.S. war on drugs, add lesser of aid or 20 to government resources. Then aid goes up by 10. Well, we know the aid can't go up any higher. U.S. aid focuses on drug war. No airstrike or activation by patrol until next propagate, and that's kind of an unpleasant one. So now I've got this ugly situation where I've got a government capabilities or an event that would give me lots of money. I've got to go with the government capability, and in fact, I'm going to kick that off right off, dropping the event in place so that I get this. Assaults will be costing only 1 resource per space. And there'll be a little chip for this. And by the government taking the event, the FARC were available to take their full activity. They took a march activity, kind of spreading out. That cost a few bucks, but then they did an extortion, including along the roads. Apparently that's allowed, which makes sense here, holding up trucks, etc. And grabbed themselves more money. Now, of course, that's there's a certain risk to grabbing the money because you're exposing people and making them easier to attack, which is just what I tried to avoid before. But we're trying to spread out and push our influence further. We may even want to do things like terror activities in order to sabotage these roads and reduce the money that the government can make. But right now, we got another card coming up. The government wanted this one, and General Serrano hits the cartels really hard. The cartels do not want that to happen. On the other hand, the cartels could use this event to move police out of areas that they don't terribly want them. For example, here. Alternatively, though, I'm going to get first shot with that. So, we'll see. So the AUC got the first real trigger on this next Plan Colombia card here. And what they chose to do with their full activity, they did a rally activity, placing the rest of their guerrillas on the board. Basically, they have a much smaller force pool than the FARC, and the cartel has an even smaller one, but they have different mechanisms. But the AUC works kind of like the FARC, where they need a bunch of guerrillas around to create bases. They're not far from victory here. They just need to push themselves up 2 bases, and if things happen, they can declare victory. So they're going to build up their resource, but that's expensive. It cost them, I think, $5 or something. So they had to do an extortion, which brought $6 back in or whatever. They've got a decent amount of money afterwards, but now a lot of stuff's exposed. So if the government chooses to act against them, the FARC can act against them no matter what. The guerrilla forces are really capable of hitting each other. But if the government chooses to move against them, which they will if they're starting to win, they're very vulnerable right now. And then for the cartels, they chose to pass because this card is more interesting to them. They don't want this card played because it hurts their resources and it'll get rid of all their guerrillas. That's pretty potent. They have like 11 of them on the board. They want to make sure at least they do something to get rid of their guerrillas before they trigger that. And that's going to sweep a bunch of other people into here. This card. I love these mechanics. The card in advance and everything. And we look to see Opina and Mora. This is one that was right on my level. This is another government capabilities. Sweeps become cheaper now. Or reduce the number of places you can hit. Now that again is something you really don't want. Like this. Oops. One space per card. No, I did the government side, which is it's only one resource per space. So I'm reducing the costs of military operations significantly. Not such a big deal. It's early in the game that you want them cheap, because later in the game I'm going to get the aid resources. Alright, I guess we'll zip this one up for you.